In a world where energy is omnipresent, where presence speaks louder than words, and where connection transcends the physical, there exists a subtle dance between the masculine and the feminine. And in this sacred dance, something extraordinary occurs when a man practices seminal retention with full spiritual awareness. Today, we're not just going to talk about what women feel in the presence of a man like this, but also about the reasons for that feeling, how it awakens a powerful ancestral force within them, and how this silent transformation is part of a spiritual journey. This isn't about superficial attraction or psychological manipulation. It's about spiritual resonance, energetic polarity, and the deep memory of the soul. Let's begin. The man who withholds his semen as a reflection of divine masculinity. Seminal retention goes beyond mere physical abstinence. Rooted in awareness and discipline, it becomes a practice that cultivates presence, calm, and inner clarity. Such a man then begins to radiate an aura that subtly reflects the archetype of divine masculinity, stable, grounded, and fully conscious. When a woman enters the energy field of a man like this, her feminine nature senses something primal and profound. She doesn't necessarily understand it logically, but something within her reminds her of it. She feels safe, not because he promises it, but because he embodies it. His serene presence tells her that he is not disturbed by earthly impulses. He is fully present now. This security is not only physical, it is emotional and energetic. It allows him to open the doors to his intuition, his sensuality, and his receptivity. The reserve man becomes a silent invitation for the woman to connect with her subtle strength, with her divine feminine essence that blossoms in presence and trust. Unlike men driven by desire or external validation, the reserve man doesn't seek to take. He gives energy, he doesn't consume it. And in this surrender, in this calm, the woman feels free to simply be herself. There's no need to act, to compare herself to others, or to wear masks. Her true nature is acknowledged, even if it remains unspoken. This is the beginning of an energetic polarity, the moment when the calm masculine awakens the feminine flow, and this subtle polarity opens spiritual doors for both. The feminine perceives energy even before words. One of the deepest truths on the path of spirituality is that energy never lies. A woman's intuition, when not clouded by trauma or social conditioning, can perceive a man's inner harmony before he even speaks. His energy is omnipresent. It communicates his discipline, his clarity, his integrity. When a man regularly practices semen retention for spiritual purposes, his energy field is recharged. This is not just about testosterone, but about life force. This life force, when not expelled carelessly, rises within him, purifying his thoughts, improving his concentration, and deepening his connection to a higher consciousness. This energy neither shouts nor boasts. It whispers. It moves subtly, like the wind before a storm, and women, especially those attuned to their own energy, perceive it. They feel the serene confidence, the gaze that doesn't wander into despair, the steady breathing, the absence of reaction. All of this creates a magnetic field that one first feels, then understands. Here, something magnificent happens. A woman's body and soul perceive the energetic difference between a distant man and an overflowing one. Instinctively, she aligns herself with the overflowing man. Why? Because it reflects the divine order of things. This isn't manipulation, it's magnetism. This magnetism awakens within her own subtleties, her inner wisdom, her feminine strength, her intuition. The fact that the man is restrained doesn't make her more powerful. It simply gives her the space she needs to remember that she already exists. The activation of feminine archetypes throughout ancient traditions. From the yogis of India to the priestesses of Egypt, the feminis has always carried archetypal powers. These aren't roles, but profound energetic patterns. The goddess, the mother, the seductress, the warrior, the healer. Most women carry all these facets within them, but they often remain dormant for lack of a sacred, masculine presence. When a man who has mastered and refined his sexual energy comes into contact with her, not to possess her, but to honor her, these archetypes begin to awaken. It is as if her soul finally feels permitted to awaken, not by force, but through resonance. The reassuring presence of the man she cherishes creates a sacred space where her untamed mystery and depth can safely express themselves. She may not even realize it at first. Suddenly, by his side, she will feel more radiant, more expressive, more creative. This is not a whim, but a spiritual awakening. Her feminine archetypes emerge not because he desires her body, but because he respects her soul. This respect creates an alchemy, and the feminine is sensitive to it. She may feel more connected to nature, to music, to her own cycles. She may rediscover her dreams, wear clothes that resonate more deeply with her, or express truths she had previously repressed. These are not simply mood swings. They are profound feminine transformations, initiated by subtle energetic support. The restrained man becomes a tuning fork, and his inner feminine instruments tune themselves, not to please him, but to reveal his true nature. This is the power of the sacred masculine presence in spiritual synergy with the feminine, a dance of power, not control. One of the greatest misconceptions about power, especially in relationships, is believing that it must be controlled or conquered through struggle. But spiritual maturity reveals something deeper. True power does not dominate. It harmonizes. When a reserved man meets a spiritually awakened woman, there is no power struggle, but an exchange. The discipline the man demonstrates in his self-control does not make him superior. On the contrary, it deepens his humility, his receptivity to the divine, and his respect for the feminine. And the woman who feels this sacred respect begins to reveal her power not through rebellion or manipulation, but as embodied wisdom, a creative flow, and intuitive intelligence. Here, the woman feels no need to conquer or test the man. She feels invited to co-create with him. She feels that her emotions are not judged, but observed. Her inner turmoil is not fought, but soothed. Her silence is not feared, but listened to. And in this sacred restraint, she remembers that her strength lies not in the desire to please, but in her very existence. The man who shares her life seeks neither to change nor to mold her. He trusts in her blossoming, and this trust is profoundly healing. It liberates her from social roles and allows her to embody spiritual strength without fear. She doesn't need to belittle herself, and he doesn't need to dominate. They both rise. This mutual elevation is invisible to the naked eye, but on a spiritual level, it's like a dance of fire and water, calm and storm, form and formlessness. It's not about control. It's about a shared and conscious elevation, spiritual union beyond physical intimacy. Finally, let's talk about a subject most people avoid: intimacy without physical contact. When a man withholds his semen, not out of fear or a desire for control, but out of respect and self-mastery, a mystical phenomenon occurs. He begins to radiate a higher frequency of love. This love is neither possessive nor dependent. It is divine. And when a woman is in the presence of such a man, she feels loved without a word, without even a touch. She feels seen not only as a body or a personality, but as a soul on its own path toward its destiny. This is spiritual intimacy. It transcends the five senses. It is the meeting of energies, the harmonization of chakras, the unspoken certainty that both are walking the sacred path of awakening. In such a union, the woman feels her subtle strengths, her ability to channel her intuition, to nurture life, to access the depths of emotions, and to preserve a sacred space, not as a burden, but as a gift. The man, through his self-mastery, becomes the silent guardian of this unfolding. He does not seek to unravel its mystery, but to witness it, and she, in turn, begins to express her fullness not for validation, but as a prayer to existence itself. In this space, sexuality becomes sacred. Even untouched, it is honored. Every glance, every breath, every shared silence is transformed into a spiritual offering. And the woman who experiences this elevation begins to walk with greater confidence in her essence, for she knows that her power lies not in seduction, but in the embodiment of the soul, an energetic transparency, and a profound emotional security. When a man controls his sexual urges, he often manages to control other, less noble impulses, such as infidelity, hyperactivity, and insecurity. Women perceive this change. A man who invests himself in the relationship wears fewer emotional masks. He no longer manipulates his identity to impress or seduce. This transparency reassures the woman, an exceptional gift in a world where most people are caught up in illusions. Her subtle power blossoms in these spaces of emotional safety. She begins to express herself with greater sincerity. She no longer feels the need to conceal her emotions or deny her essence. On the contrary, her intuition sharpens. Her emotions flow freely, and her femininity becomes more refined and radiant. Her strength lies in her emotional depth, and only a man capable of giving her space without judgment can truly liberate her. Many men, without realizing it, stifle this depth in a woman by reacting to her emotions or trying to control her expressions. But the man who respects her, grounded and serene, is not afraid of the flow of her emotions. He lets her weather her storm without losing himself, and in doing so, he gives her the courage to explore her inner oceans. It is in this vast ocean that the woman realizes her emotions are not burdens, but spiritual instruments of alchemy, and with the man held hostage, they begin to transmute pain into strength, chaos into clarity. Thus, subtle feminine power is born not from control, but from trust. It is in emotional security that she blossoms most magnificently, awakening the sacred memory of the feminine. Every woman carries within her this memory, this ancestral knowledge of the divine, this intuitive wisdom, this divine sexuality, and this creative power. But centuries of repression, trauma, and conditioning keep these memories dormant. The man who practices semen retention does not pursue his body. He acknowledges his soul. He perceives the divine within it even before it remembers him. And this sacred acknowledgement, experienced without desire or expectation, begins to awaken his ancestral memory. It is not about adoration or idealization, but about resonance. His higher vibrational state begins to bring forth his hidden essence. The woman feels inexplicably drawn once again to dance, to creation, to care, not to performance, but to memory. She might begin to embody her inner priestess, Ela, or Sia, not because the man activates her, but because his presence reflects a frequency that her soul recognizes as true. This is a spiritual memory, not a romantic fantasy. In his presence, she begins to access parts of herself long buried beneath fear or shame. She begins to move forward with greater courage, to express deeper truths, and to love herself with greater integrity. This is the true dance of divine souls. Each reminds the other of who she already is. The woman senses his unwavering determination. Determination is one of the most powerful spiritual hallmarks of a man in control. His discipline over his sexual energy allows him to channel it upward, toward creation, leadership, and contribution. And women can perceive this determination not only in his words, but also in his actions in his room, and his ability to create a nurturing space. This kind of purpose-driven energy is incredibly appealing on a spiritual level. A woman begins to feel secure, not because the man desires her, but because he doesn't need her to feel complete. His life has meaning. He is grounded in a mission that transcends the ego. This also allows the woman to fully blossom on her own path. She doesn't have to overload herself, control everything, or suppress her drive to compensate for the man's lack of direction. On the contrary, she feels subtly supported, both spiritually and energetically. In his presence, she no longer seeks to dominate or compete with him. She feels free to be fully in her feminine essence, giving and receiving support in return. Her subtle power, her benevolent, intuitive, and creative intelligence are amplified because they are no longer hindered by mistrust. A man's restraint becomes a spiritual pillar, and a woman's expression a rushing river, fueled by her unwavering strength, healing ancestral wounds through energetic integrity. Many women carry ancestral wounds related to abandonment, betrayal, and emotional neglect. These are often rekindled by unconscious masculine behaviors rooted in lust, emotional detachment, or energetic irresponsibility. A man who preserves and refines his energy exudes a different kind of presence, one that doesn't reopen old wounds but helps them heal. He listens without trying to fix them. He remains present even when emotions run high. He isn't afraid of vulnerability. This isn't acting. It's an energetic integrity born from mastering his own life force. When a woman feels this, she begins to soften in areas she didn't know were protected. She begins to open doors she's kept closed her whole life. And in doing so, she begins to access her healed strength, not the strength that protects her, but the strength that expresses her truth. Her feminine energy becomes warmer, more confident, and more radiant. And this change isn't just personal, but generational. She heals for her grandmothers, her mother, and her future daughters. The man who is held back may not even realize the healing he is facilitating, but his presence, his awareness, his constant energy create a sanctuary where the female lineage begins to breathe again, a gateway to a higher love and a conscious relationship. The union between a reserve man and a spiritually awakened woman can open the way to a higher love, a love that transcends possession, fear, and attachment. It becomes a conscious relationship where each person commits to personal growth, truth, and inner freedom. The love of the reserved man is neither possessive nor suffocating. It is immense. He doesn't need her approval because he's already connected to his source. And she, imbued with this profound love, rises in her subtle strength, not like a queen who needs a throne, but like a sovereign being who chooses to co-create. Together, they create a space conducive to deep conversations, spiritual practices, emotional transparency, and divine intimacy. Their relationship becomes an altar, not for ego, but for evolution. And even in the face of difficulties, they don't blame each other or back down. They use friction as an engine for growth. The woman feels strong not because the man values her, but because he never takes that away from her. This is the sacred circle. Energy and retention create the masculine center. Feminine power envelops them, and together they form a vortex of healing, awakening, and love that transcends time. So how do women feel their subtle power with a man who holds them? They feel it because he doesn't steal their light. He reflects it. They feel it because his calm invites them to blossom. They feel it because his discipline becomes a vessel for their unbridled passion. They feel it because their respect reminds them of their divinity. And they feel it because, on the spiritual path, the sacred masculine and the divine feminine were never meant to clash, but to awaken each other. If you are a man on this path, know this: your restraint is not merely personal. It is a silent offering to the world, to the divine, and to every soul you encounter. And if you are a woman who recognizes herself in these words, remember that your strength is already within you. A cowering presence only serves to remind you of this. Together, we rise.